This is a 1993 Chevy S10. It's been customized so far extensively, and it's only going to get more and more.
So temp tag should be money pit?
You know, I don't know anyone that builds, well, pretty much any vehicle for that matter, that isn't a complete and total money pit.
How long have you had it?
I've had it about 2.5 years.
Specifically for a project?
Yes, I have always been interested in building trucks like this. Kind of what I got into when I was younger, and it just kind of stuck with me. And having a wife and 2 kids and a mortgage and everything else, it doesn't leave a lot of money to go out and buy a brand new truck and start cutting it up. I came across a deal for, less than $1,000 to purchase this from essentially the original owner that took fairly well care of it for, 25 years. You look at what you have and you have this vision. Okay, I have this, and then your vision is what it looks like when it's done. The hard part is getting to there. The first thing I had to do was the molding I had to pull off of it. I had to do that because I know that molding holds in moisture. I wanted to see what I was really working with. I had to start, getting to what was unknown. That's why the paint kind of looks like it is. When you're starting out and you have hardly no budget, you're gonna make mistakes that you can't fix, and you're gonna show the character of the vehicle that you wouldn't have known otherwise.
Right.
I've lowered it twice. They say
once just isn't enough.
Yeah, I know, right? Anything worth doing is worth doing at least twice. The first time I lowered it, it was drop spindles, some springs, and a lowering block in the back. And I think it was like a 3-3 kit, 3 inch in the front, 3 inch in the rear kind of kit. And it made it look all right. The second lowering was significantly more involved. We get into modifying the frame, the leading leaf springs. In the front, the lowering springs that I had really just weren't enough. So I took a set of factory springs out of a newer body style, in which has a thicker diameter spring. And it also comes with an extra half coil. I cut 2 coils off. And of course, when you do that, you have a flat end and you have an uneven end. So I took the uneven end and positioned the lowest point, the furthest part out of the suspension. So that way it pushes in and gives a little bit better handling. Putting airbags on this in the future is going to be way more extensive. Some people will just throw some airbags on a car and just, hey, I got a bagged car, but it rides terrible, it doesn't handle well. I'm going to be 40 years old in 10 days. I can't be bouncing around town. I want to enjoy driving the vehicle. But as far as when I lowered it, with the lower control arms, the factory ones have a lot of humps. A friend of mine fortunately had a set of what's known as de-humped control arms. And it's essentially where they cut those humps off and weld in metal to make it nice and smooth. And it buys you in the vicinity of an inch of clearance. That was the last thing I did with lowering this thing. Before I did that, you hit a bump and you would think an explosion went off. You can hear it next to the car or to the truck, and you can hear it inside the vehicle and feel it something fierce. Buying that 1 inch was the biggest change of all. It really made the vehicle very drivable, where I could hit the bumps in the road like any other car, and it wouldn't be like some teenager just shaking all over the place.
Tell me about the wheels.
The wheels are 17 by 8s. They're by a company called Progressive. They're a knockoff of the Centerline Trigons, which would date back to, I believe, the late 90s, early 2000s. It's very, very difficult to find billet wheels, or some would refer to them as baby billets, in Southwest Virginia. Typically, if they come up for sale, they're extremely expensive, just because everybody knows if you want to go get something like this, you're either going to buy it from me, or you're going to travel over a whole bunch of mountains out into a city somewhere. So they can justifiably ask a tremendous price. I did not pay very much for these. I paid under $300 for the entire set. But when I got them, they were terrible condition. I spent, not last winter, but the previous one, about 4 months cleaning them up. In what spare time I had, I took them to work with me. Any break time I had, downtime, I was working on them, sanding them down and polishing them. The great thing about billet wheels is, you can sand them down and polish them back up, and they can look brand new all over again. The exhaust is pretty much my next move on this vehicle as far as any performance-related items. There's a purpose behind it other than to be faster or whatever, and that's that the exhaust is all factory routed, so it comes down, goes over the rear axle, and comes out right over here where we're standing. The problem with this on a lowered vehicle is, of course, the entire geometry changes of what the exhaust is going to be next to and how close or how far away it's going to be. And the issue that I'm having is no matter what shock I put on this, the top part of the shock, the plastic part, melts off. Essentially what I'm going to do is have the pipe shortened to where the muffler is located, and then have the exhaust come out right here in front of the back wheel on the passenger side. So the build for this vehicle is not to build a daily driver, but to build a vehicle that I could daily drive. When you drive a mini truck daily, it takes a certain very special kind of person to be able to drive it every day and not completely lose their mind. You've got to be able to step away from it, because you'll get burnt out. I don't want to get burnt out driving this vehicle because I enjoy it so much. When the truck gains an air suspension on it, when I bag the truck, there's two common things that happen. One, somebody puts a large cross member across the top, which pretty much blocks you from rolling anything into the bed. Or two, people raise the bed up to put everything beneath it. For me, I have a vintage motorcycle, and I would like to be able to carry it with me to shows. I think it'd be a lot of fun. So how do we engineer the suspension and any cross members that we have for strength and stability to work with pulling a motorcycle still into the bed? I could raise the bed up, but then I'd have a hard time getting the motorcycle into the bed without it getting caught, falling, and me looking more like an idiot than I normally do. Or I have seen some vehicles where they put what I refer to as a low rung cross member. Essentially, they make the cross member about as even with the frame as possible. That way I'd be able to roll it on here. So that's a Colorado Customs. Some refer to it as the Hancock, some people refer to it as the Switchcock. I bought it used. It's been well used. The horn button on it's beat up where I think someone tried to take it off incorrectly. I think it's part of the charm of it. I don't know if I would ever fix it. I've toyed with the idea, hey, I'm going to try and find a new horn button today. There are aftermarket horn buttons made to make it look nice, but the problem is they don't have any kind of name or anything on them. They're very boring looking, and I don't want this to be, I want it to have character, I want people to know it's a Colorado Custom steering wheel. Lowering the vehicle, of course you can see that there's wheels and tires in here and not inner fender wells. And that'll change when the vehicle gets an air suspension. But in order to lower the vehicle, I had to do a few things. I replaced the lower control arms, the springs, the spindles, and of course when I did all that, I changed brake pads, rotors, wheel bearings, made everything where it's nice and new. I still have the factory sway bar. I put in new sway bar links when I did it, and I'm still running factory shocks. So when lowering the truck, like I said on the other side, that I had to remove the inner fender well and cut the inside of the fender. There was also reservoirs that sat on the inner fender wells that I had to relocate. The washer fluid reservoir and the reservoir for the coolant or antifreeze, however you want to put it. Moving these was no small task. You had to get smart, ingenuitive of how am I going to put something somewhere that it's not supposed to be. And in modifying a vehicle, it's a constant struggle and there is no textbook for it. This very poor looking chrome cover on my air cleaner here was purchased at a resale shop that charges by the pound. So I think I have about 30 cents in that. It just so happened to fit and I couldn't have been happier with it. When you take on a custom build for a vehicle, oftentimes the vehicle is in shambles. The love has been lost for it. It's really a super fantastic way to give something a second life.